A very good morning to you, and thanks for joining us on the News at 10, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I am Muslima Sholebo, and I'm here with Patricia. How are you?
I'm fine, ma. Thank you. And I am Patricia Asamiluba. Good to have you join us for the news this hour. Now, the headlines.
Train services along Abuja-Kaduna route resumes today.
Do train station and the second trip from Idu to Rigasa in Kaduna State just leave.
President Buhari stresses need for strengthening the Gulf of Guinea Commission.
Nigeria's Akinwumi Adesina set for a second term as independent panel clears him.
Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency warns of more flooding as the rainy season approaches its peak.
Middle of August and September are very critical for flooding in Nigeria.
And we start with good news that the train services along Abuja-Kaduna route resumed today after 3 months suspension due to COVID-19 pandemic.
Correspondent Olushe Adegbo is right now at the Idu train station to give us an update of activities at the station. Olushe, what is the situation at the Idu station on resumption of train services today?
Well, thank you, Patricia and Muslima. We discovered, let me start by saying that it's actually 4 months and 3 days that the train services were put to stop due to COVID-19. And at resumption is actually commenced today. And if just few minutes to 10, at about a minute to 10, the second trip to Kaduna in Rigasa left the Idu rail station. Right from the morning time, we observed that since this is actually coming at the period when there is easing of lockdown due to COVID-19, all PTF directives on ensuring the COVID-19 protocols are being put in place. Right from the entrance, we see the thermometer checking the temperature of passengers coming, and even down to the ticketing. There are a lot of social distancing rule. Security officials and staffs of the NRSC are also on ground to ensure strict compliance to all these measures. This, like I said, at about 7, the first trip left and the second trip is just leaving. That explains that another trip will be coming from Kaduna to Abuja here, and after that we see the third trip, which is scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Like in the morning, I also have the manager of the Abuja-Kaduna rail line, that is Mr. Pascal, who will also be telling us of measures and how they are ensuring that this.
Thank you very much, Olushe. Meanwhile, the Buhari Media Organization describes the decision to name 23 new railway stations after some prominent Nigerians as an affirmation that Nigeria now has a functional contemporary railway network. In a statement by its chairman, Nias Akinshiju, the group says this reflects a legacy of the railway modernization project that President Muhammadu Buhari is building. The BMO also notes that the country has never had a situation where that number of railway stations will be ready for use at a time, describing it as a dividend of President Buhari's single-minded commitment to expanding the country's rail infrastructure after inheriting a single, nearly completed Abuja-Kaduna railway project in 2015. The group adds that the president deserves commendation for naming railway stations along the 2 rail corridors after prominent Nigerians who have had a great impact in their local communities and the country. The Federal Road Safety Corps says all measures have been put in place to ensure hitch-free movement during the Eid al-Kabir celebration.
Corps Education Officer B.C. Kazim stated this while talking about the level of preparedness of the Corps for the festive period. Oyeyemi Ajayi has details.
Eid al-Kabir is one of the major Islamic festivals that attracts mass movement of people from one part of the country to another. However, with the prevailing COVID-19 pandemic, this year's celebration seems to be on a low key to avoid community spread of the virus. Based on this, it is expected that there will still be some movement of people, hence propelling deployment of personnel, equipment and others on the highways to prevent road crashes.
All hands are on deck. About 35,000 special marshals and regular marshals have been deployed. Our major target, we have about 53 black spots identified already, and there are going to be about 201 mobile courts to try people summarily, so that at the end of the day, we'll be able to put enough stringent measures. We will do enforcement, we'll do enlightenment, and if you are caught and you are taken to mobile court, you are your own.
The Corps Public Education Officer also says that the COVID-19 presidential directives of physical distancing in vehicles, the mandatory use of face masks, and others remain in place, and defaulters will be adequately sanctioned. In Abuja, Oyeyemi Ajayi, NTA News.
And in the meantime, the Nigerian government has made a strong representation to member states of the Gulf of Guinea Commission to do whatever is necessary towards strengthening the organization.
President Muhammadu Buhari was speaking at a visual audience with the Executive Secretary of the Commission, Florentina Adenike Okonga. State House correspondent Adamu Sambu reports.
Describing the Gulf of Guinea as very strategic, President Muhammadu Buhari said it is regrettable that member states of the Commission are not keeping alive to their responsibilities. He said the theft of oil through the Gulf must be checked, so also the smuggling of arms and ammunition, as well as the breaking of maritime border regulations. The president promised that Nigeria will meet its part of the bargain in terms of prompt payment of dues and urged member states to also defray their financial commitments and participate actively in the programs of the Commission. He used the opportunity to thank Angola, where the Secretariat of the Commission is based, for keeping faith with its responsibilities. President Buhari insists that in spite of the economic challenges posed by COVID-19, member states should keep the organization going. The Executive Secretary, Gulf of Guinea Commission, Nigeria's Florentina Adenike Okonga, had raised the many ills that plagued the Commission, including lack of funds through the non-payment of annual dues by member countries. She also decried poor attendance at meetings or sending of low-level representation and non-holding of elections to determine the next chairman since Nigeria finished her tenure in 2018. The absence of such, Mrs. Adenike Okonga explained, led to various deleterious developments like overfishing of the waters, oil theft, pollution, as well as arms trafficking. She appealed to President Muhammadu Buhari to sustain efforts at mobilizing the leaders of member countries so that the Commission can fulfill its purpose. The Gulf of Guinea Commission is the framework for consultation on issues of development and cooperation by member states. From the State House, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
Nigeria's Akinwumi Adesina is set to be re-elected for a second term as president of the African Development Bank.
And this follows his vindication by an independent investigation panel into allegations of nepotism and abuse of procedures. Abdullahi Mohammed tells you more about this.
$24 billion on that strategy to feed Africa. And we need a lot of technical support.
After succeeding Donald Kaberuka of Rwanda at the Africa Development Bank, Nigeria's former agricultural minister Akinwumi Adesina became the 8th elected president of the bank. He had an impressive record which led to the approval of about $115 billion capital increase to the bank from its 80 members, the first in the history of the 55-year-old bank. But just as he braces for re-election, Akinwumi Adesina's ambition began to hit the rocks. He was accused of nepotism and abuse of procedures. That hurdle he has since crossed. The United States of America, being the bank's second largest shareholder, only second to Nigeria, pushed for an independent probe. The three-member independent investigators were expected to review the previous verdict by the Ethics Committee, which was upheld by the Apex Bureau of the Board of Governors of the bank. The panel, after due diligence, vindicated Mr. Adesina and stated that it has considered the president's submission on their face and finds them consistent with his innocence and to be persuasive. This verdict, therefore, clears the way for governors of the bank to re-elect Adesina for another term during the annual meeting of the bank scheduled to hold next month. Abdullah Mohammed, NTA News.
President Muhammadu Buhari warmly rejoices with President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, on the clearing of all allegations against him by anonymous group and further validation of his competence and integrity to lead the institution. President Buhari also congratulates AFDB Board of Directors, the Ethics Committee, and member states staff for their courage, maturity, and competence in following through the process of investigations and acceptance of report of panel of high-level independent experts which reviewed the reports of Ethics Committee of AFDB and Dr. Adesina's response. The President commends the eminent personalities consisting of Mary Robinson, Justice Hassan Jallo, and Leonard McCarthy, who handled the review of the report of the Ethics Committee and their professionalism in rejecting support services and providing a unanimous report. President Buhari believes the conclusion of the review should finally draw a curtain on the allegations that created distractions for the entire institution for a period and serve as impetus for more diligence in handling responsibilities while fueling the zeal to deliver on the promises of a greater Africa.
And the presidency has applauded the steps taken by the caretaker and extraordinary National Convention Planning Committee of the APC to reposition the governing party.
President Muhammadu Buhari made a commendation at a virtual interactive session with members of the Progressives Governors Forum. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo has the report.
Following the suspension of the national chairman and subsequent dissolution of the National Working Committee of the APC, the National Executive Committee of the party chose the Yobe State Governor Mai Mala Buni and others as the chairman and members of the caretaker and extraordinary National Convention Planning Committee respectively. At a virtual interactive meeting with the governors of the APC-controlled states attended by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, President Muhammadu Buhari expressed satisfaction with the work that the caretaker committee led by Governor Mai Mala Buni of Yobe State has been doing. He described the Yobe State governor as highly mobile in the renewed drive towards coordinating and strengthening the governing party. President Buhari also appreciated the efforts of the APC governors following the successful conduct of the party's governorship primaries in Edo and Ondo states. The governors, he said, knew their responsibilities and therefore identified the right priorities. Speaking on behalf of his colleagues, the governor of Kebbi State and chairman of the Progressives Governors Forum, Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, thanked President Buhari for taking the right steps towards resolving the crisis in the party. The president was also applauded for his genuine efforts at tackling security issues and those of the economy, noting in particular the successes recorded in pulling the country out of the 2016 economic recession, as well as the ongoing management of the coronavirus pandemic. The APC governors say they are indeed proud of President Buhari's leadership, achievements, and guidance towards taking Nigeria to the next level of socio-economic growth and development. From the State House, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
The news at 10 is broadcast on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Up ahead.
NISA advises Nigerians to prepare for more flooding. This and more after the break.
The Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency says Nigerians should prepare for more flooding this year, with many days of rainfall expected in the next 3 months, as predicted by the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET.
NTA Fineface reports that NISA is advising individuals, communities and governments at the states and local government levels to take precautions to avoid further losses of lives and destruction of property.
Annual flood outlook released in May 2020 predicted that at least 102 local government areas in 28 states fall within highly probable flood risk areas. Flooding incidents with attendant destructions and loss of lives are already being recorded in parts of the country. Earliest cessation dates for rainfall in northern Nigeria is 26 September and 28 December in the south. Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency is therefore warning of many more days of rainfall and flood.
The month of August, middle of August and September are very critical for flooding in Nigeria. If therefore, as early as June, in some parts of Nigeria, we are losing lives and property occasioned by flooding, I don't know what will happen by the time we approach middle of August and September in Nigeria.
In the event there is a release of excess water in dams upstream rivers Niger and Benue, states located along the rivers will witness coastal flooding. The states include Kebbi, Niger, Kwara, Adamawa, Taraba, Benue, Nasarawa, and Kogi. Others are Anambra, Delta, Edo, Rivers, and Bayelsa.
That when the floods are already here, to begin to build drainages, to begin to demolish houses that are within the water parts, flood parts, may become difficult at this point in time. That the best that could be done now is relocation of people in the flood-prone areas. This includes estates.
Clogging water channels, poor waste management, deforestation, and global warming, NESA says, are some factors responsible for urban flooding in Nigeria. In Abuja, Onengie Fineface, NTA News.
Thank you, Onengie. And joining us in the studio to discuss flooding and ways to mitigate is Kayode Fagbemi, Director, Planning, Research and Forecasting of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you have heard the report from NISA. So what are Nigerians in for exactly in terms of heavy downpour and flooding in the coming weeks?
The flood of 2020 is going to be peculiar.
Wow.
Peculiar in the sense that we already have pandemic. The pandemic has affected the people. It has made them more vulnerable. Many of them don't even have, means of livelihood. And then the flood also coming at the same time. So we know this is going to be critical. And we have been working at the federal level, at the NEMA and the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, to see that we help to support the state governments where those floods will occur. The Nigerians should expect that this is an incident within an incident. As we have pandemic, are we having flood, more people will be affected and we have to suffer. So in that wise, we are working with the stakeholders, especially at the state level. And by next week, all the offices of NEMA and the headquarters will be out to support the state, identify those communities that will be affected, identify high ground they can be evacuated, identify what they need, for those periods. So by next week, we are going out en masse to do that.
Now, evacuation of drainages, is it substantial enough to mitigate the impact of the flooding as expected?
Of course it does. Because what we know is that most of the drainages are the ones that evacuate the flood water away. However, because of our poor waste disposal in the country, all over, including the FCT, people engage, the wheelbarrow or truck pushers to dispose with our drainages. And what they do is that they just take them away from your house. The next drainage they see, they dump them there. Or maybe waterways, channel, they dump them there. And when there is flood, the flood water is hindered from flowing freely. And because it's hindered, it branches into places they are not supposed to be. And that's why it affects those people and houses. So we are asking the DG NEMA, AVM M.A. Mohammed, retired, has written to all the state governors, and that, telling them proposing mitigation measures. And one of them is to clear all drainages, channels, waste. And you see some rivers passing along the urban areas, they are already blocked. People have dumped all sorts of things there. We were in Gbagalada on Sunday, we saw similar things. People have dumped their their waste there. So if they can be cleared before time, it will go along in mitigating the effect of flooding this year.
Now, you talked about dumping of refuse, which is a regular thing. Now, what should the people themselves and government do to ensure that this stops, so that it's not a situation where, few months or few weeks before the rainy season, we start clearing this dumped materials? And what precautionary measures should the states and the local governments and even the people themselves take to avoid further losses of lives and the destruction of property, which is a result of all this flooding?
Thank you very much. This is where education comes, into this whole thing. Okay. By the time you educate people that the flood, we have been telling people flood is not a disaster. Flood is a hazard. And how do we interact with flood? By the time you tell people there are things they can do, we don't have to wait until government declares a national environmental day. Communities should come together and clear their drains. If you see anybody pouring any refuse into the drainages, you check them, you arrest them. Community must work together, and very important. And we are going to help them. We are going to communities. Then the state government also should make it a point of duty. There are many houses that should not be where they are. They are already in the floodplain, but maybe because of political consideration, we don't want to demolish them, and you mark some houses. Before you come back, they are already built up. We must take decisions that can save life. It may be hard, but those are decisions. So there are things that the community can do. Community engagement is important. Community awareness is important. They should know that this flood is not the act of God. That, okay, when somebody is swept away, because of flood, we say, oh, it is God that caused it. No, it's not God. It is we that have gone to stay where we have been made vulnerable. We can reduce our vulnerability. We can increase our capacity. By the time we are clearing our drains, we are increasing our capacity to cope with the flood. We are reducing our vulnerability. Those are the things we can do. We can reduce this risk. Community can do that. And we are very grateful to NTA and all the stations that are helping to educate people. Don't wait. Let's do something. We can do something. to reduce the risk of flood disasters in our community.
Okay, all said and done, Mr. Fagbemi. What then is your advice to Nigerians, especially those residing at the flood-prone areas, to do as more rainfalls is expected in the coming weeks?
Our advice is people that are vulnerable, they know it. We were in Wewalada, I said on Sunday, and we asked some people that are affected, say, we know it's been coming, but it has not been like this. Those who know that they are vulnerable to flood to evacuate, let them move. They know they were affected in 2012 flood, they were affected 2018 flood, some of them were affected last year. So if you know you are affected, please move away and save your life, because flood can come in the night when it is difficult for you to be rescued. Community may be able to rescue you, we may call a rescue agency, but if it happens in the night, it's to be too late. So we are encouraging people to evacuate. And I'm sure the state are ready to support people, to put them in camps, despite the fact that we know that if we put them in camps, we must maintain some social distancing and all that. We are going to do that. We will ensure that people that need to be moved, let them move. We should not come and be pushing them to move. It may be too late that time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fagbemi, on all your insights.
Thank you very much.
Now, the Niger State Governor, Abubakar Sani Bello, has directed the setting up of a committee to check indiscriminate building of structures on waterways in major towns of the state.
The governor, who gave the directive when he visited areas affected by last Saturday's flood disaster in Suleja, says it is to avert a recurrence. Suleiman Kadogi reports.
Saturday, 25th July 2020 was a black day for residents of Suleja local government area, where early morning downpour claimed 13 lives. The record also shows that 9 persons are still missing, 7 injured, and 431 houses, including schools and places of worship, were destroyed by flood. This informed the visit of Governor Abubakar Sani Bello to the affected areas for a first-hand information and to sympathize with the victims. The governor, who described the incident as unfortunate, blamed some residents for building on waterways indiscriminately, not minding the dangers involved, stating that it is not going to be business as usual. Arriving at Angwangwari, one of the affected areas, he commiserated with the family that lost 4 out of their 6 children in the unfortunate incident.
That night when the flood started, my 2 other children, they climbed here to pack the chairs, whereas the other children are inside. All of us were inside before the rain. So what happened is that we are just singing before the flood came.
We are appealing to government to come to the help of the inhabitants of this area.
Our prayers with the families of the deceased. They are going through challenging times. At the moment they are grieving. I'm also concerned that we have not been able to recover some of the bodies yet. But I also understand there's an ongoing search.
I've already gotten in touch with the DG NEMA. I have written, I have signed before I left.
The governor thereafter visited the palace of the Emir of Suleja, Malam Muhammad Awal Ibrahim, where he condoled with him and the entire people of the Suleja Emirates. In Mina, Suleiman Kodogi, NTA News.
This is the news at 10, broadcast on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Up ahead.
This is NTA News 24 broadcasting from Abuja. You can watch us anywhere, anytime on the following platforms.
Start Times, Channel 101, Channel 743, Yes TV, Channel 419, and 4TV, Channel 4.
This is NTA International.
For now, the best and most efficient way to avoid getting infected is through regular hygienic and sanitary practices, as well as social distancing. As individuals, we remain the greatest weapon to fight this pandemic. By washing our hands regularly with clean water and soap, disinfecting frequently used surfaces and areas, coughing into a tissue or elbow, and strictly adhering to infection prevention control measures in health facilities, we can contain this virus.
Lagos, the commercial capital of Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation, is endowed with numerous sources of attractions, from its large collection of beaches to cinemas and event centers, which has kept both its teeming population and visitors entertained, despite the hustling and bustling of the city and the state as a whole.